Welcome to the Your Brain Shift podcast, where we explore topics that promote mindset shifts and brain shifts for greater success, health and wellness, and fulfillment. I'm Keith Engelhardt, and today we'll be exploring a replay of one of the Your Brain Shift Clubhouse rooms. Hi everyone, I'm Keith Engelhardt, your Chief Success Officer, and welcome to the Your Brain Shift Club and today's room on Are You Aware of Your Cognitive Errors? So a little bit about me. I'm the founder and CEO of SWOT Solutions and NeuroYoga.zone, and with a number of offerings and programs, I help individuals as well as organizations evolve and accelerate and exponentially increase their success. And I do that because too many people struggle with success. Think about it. In school life, did you ever have a course on success? The answer is pretty much 100% no. So the follow-up questions are, what's that costing you, and why wouldn't you want to find out how to be more successful? So my evidence-based, neuroscience-based, positive intelligence-based programs give you the knowledge and the skills to be more successful. I also provide neuroscience-based stress reduction and anxiety reduction programs, since both of those are major impediments to one's success. So again, welcome to the Your Brain Shift Club and this week's room on Are You Aware of Your Cognitive Errors? We'll be meeting today for about an hour or so, maybe more, maybe less, depending on how many people attend, where the conversation and subject matter take us. I do appreciate you taking time and spending your life energy today and joining me. I promise to make it worth your effort and time. Replays are on, so if you're unable to stay for the whole journey, circle back, listen to the replay, and I encourage you to revisit the session to nudge your brain again regarding the content, since review is the foundation of retention and recall and mastery. So let me turn on the back channel here in case somebody's reaching out there, as well as the room chat, so I can communicate it at that level. So feel free to share the room with others. Sharing is caring. Help spread the content to foster greater success in the world, as well as fulfillment, greater fulfillment in life. Also, if you're not a member of the club, join us, as well as follow me to keep abreast of all my rooms in this club, as well as my other clubs and rooms. And if you're new to Clubhouse, you can join the clubs by clicking the greenhouse next to the title of the room. And if you follow me, then you'll get notifications, especially if you click that little bell. And the system will let you know when I'm launching rooms. To begin, I like to start my rooms with a bit of a neuro nudge that comes from Alan Cooper. It's an ancient Cherokee word, konobusako, which means letting go of your cherished misconceptions. So during our time together today, I'd like to challenge you to konobusako, let go of your cherished misconceptions about what you know about success. And along today's topic, your cognitive errors. And when we explore that, not just today, but every day, you'll find that you can open up all kinds of potential and possibility. So why not learn the cognitive errors that get in the way of your achievement and success? So fundamentally, we all have cognitive errors that impede our success and sabotage us in many ways. They're unavoidable. It's part of the human experience. And most are learned early in life and have become unconscious. Cognitive errors are far too deep seated to rid ourselves completely of them. However, when we do diminish them, we can see some amazing results, but do realize that silencing them would require sort of superhuman willpower. It's still a worthy goal because not all cognitive errors are toxic and forms of sabotage, and some are necessary for leading a good life. But having a awareness of them and weakening the ones that don't serve us allow us to avoid self-induced sabotage, unhappiness, and failure. So, what if we could learn to recognize and evade some of our biggest errors in thinking? How would that change things in our private lives, at work, in our social containers, government and other social containers? We might actually experience a leap of prosperity that up to now evaded us. At least that's the premise of the author of a recent book, The Art of Thinking Critically. It's an awesome read, and we'll be going over a few of the cognitive errors that he exposes in that book. So fundamentally, we all have maps of the world that are replete with perceptual blind spots, cognitive blind spots, and cognitive errors. And the more perceptions and opinions that we're exposed to and adapt to, the greater flexibility we have to overcome our cognitive errors and become more effective. So today we're going to explore 3 of the over 100 cognitive errors that have been identified. Number 1 is why we see shapes in clouds. Interesting title. Caught my eye, and I thought it was a more interesting one, so I thought I'd make it the first of 3 that we'll explore in the realm of cognitive errors. And a little story to set the foundation. In 1994, Diane Doiser, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, from Florida, had a otherworldly encounter. After biting into a slice of toast and placing it back down on the plate, she noticed that what she perceived was the face of the Virgin Mary in it. And immediately she stopped eating and stored the divine message, minus a bite, in a plastic container. And in November 2004, she actually auctioned the still fairly well-preserved snack on eBay. That slice of bread earned her $28,000. And the point of the story is we've all seen patterns in things. Have you ever seen faces in clouds or outlines of animals in rocks? Of course you have. This is perfectly normal. The human brain seeks patterns and rules, and in fact, it takes it one step further. If the brain doesn't find any familiar patterns, it will simply invent some. It'll make things up. The more diffuse the signal or input that it's processing, such as background noise on like the old cassette tapes, the easier it is for the brain to find hidden patterns or messages into it. Another example is in 1976, the Viking 1 explorer that was sent to Mars photographed several areas of the landscape, and one of those photographs revealed a feature that got labeled the face on Mars. And the face on Mars photograph has since become a pop icon. It has starred in a Hollywood film, appeared in books, magazines, radio talk shows, and even haunted grocery store checkout lines for a good 25 years. And 25 years later, after uncovering the face of Mars, the Mars Global Surveyor sent back very clear, crisp images of rock formations and the contours and textures and lighting that was labeled as the face on Mars, the captivating human face, was dissolved into just plain old gravel. The face on Mars is a trick of the eye and brain that was seen when light hits the rock formations at a certain angle, and different parts of the planet's surface are more resistant to erosion than others and don't erode as quickly, leaving some areas higher and more weathered than others. Yet, what was nothing more than rocks and gravel, our brains saw a pattern that in this case got labeled as the face on Mars. So when it comes to pattern recognition, we are sort of oversensitive. So when you see things, especially things that are out of the norm or unusual places, it's worthwhile to regain your skepticism. If you think you've discovered a pattern, first consider it as possibly being pure chance. If it seems too good to be true, find a mathematician, a scientist, or expert, and have the information tested statistically is one of the nudges that comes from the author of the book, The Art of Thinking Critically. And a few years back, I actually created a video of how our brain does kind of fill in patterns, make stuff up at times. And I'll post that video to the top of the room. It's in my series of Master Your Mind Minutes on YouTube. So give me a second to edit that and I'll shuffle the Facebook group link to the room chat so it's still available, since I'm going to replace the link at the top of the room. And it's an interesting, just a few minute video to give you an idea of our brain's natural ability, since it is a pattern recognition engine, to kind of, because of our creative frontal lobes, actually make up patterns that don't really exist. This characteristic is actually leveraged quite a bit by magicians rather, with the sleight of hand. It's also why we see optical illusions and so much more. So I encourage you to check out the short video on is it fact or is it fiction, and recognize that one of our primary cognitive errors can be seeing shapes in clouds, in pieces of bread, or in the landscape on Mars. Okay, let's move on to number 2. And that is you control less than what you think. One of our biggest cognitive errors is the illusion of control. And an example from the book I mentioned, The Art of thinking critically, is in casinos in Las Vegas. Most people throw the dice as hard as they can. If they need a higher number on the roll of the dice, and as gingerly as possible when they're hoping for a low number, which is not rational. It's sort of nonsensical, as is football fans thinking that they can shift the game or the game outcome by gesturing in front of the TV. Unfortunately, they share the illusion along with many people who also seek to influence the world by sending out perhaps the right thoughts or vibrations, positive energy, and so forth. Not that our energy levels and positive mindset and everything don't have an influence on our own perception and choices, but the illusion of control is a tendency to believe that we can influence something over which we have absolutely no sway at all. This was actually discovered in 1965 by two researchers, Jenkins and Ward, and one of their experiments was simple. It consisted of two switches and a light. And the men were able to adjust when the switches connected to the light and when they weren't. So even when the light flashed on and off at random, subjects were still convinced that they could influence it by flicking the switches, even though behind the scenes the researchers were controlling when the switch was enabled and when it wasn't. There was another similar experience done with flashing lights on a screen that had similar outcomes. And this actually is more common than we think. We've all been on elevators, but did you know that the door open and door close buttons in elevators, many are not even connected to the electrical panel? These tricks sort of are designed also in open office plans. For some people, it's always too hot. Others, it's too cold. And designers have created the illusion of control by installing fake temperature dials. And it's literally automated and controls the temperature automatically, which reduces energy bills. But having the fake thermostat also reduces complaints. So the ploys of what are often called placebo buttons, the buttons in the elevator that really don't open or close the door, they're going to be on an automatic cycle anyway. But these placebo buttons are being pushed in more realms than we realize. This applies also to systems. And a common one is central bankers and government officials employ placebo buttons masterfully. Take, for instance, the federal funds rate, which is an extreme short-term rate, an overnight rate to be precise. While this rate doesn't affect long-term interest rates, which are a function of supply and demand, and which are an important factor in investment decisions, the stock market nevertheless reacts frantically to every little change in the overnight funds rate. Nobody understands why overnight interest rates can have such an effect on the market, but everybody thinks they do, and therefore they do. But if you look at the long-term statistics of it, that small fractional rate has very little impact since ultimately long-term interest rates are a function of supply and demand. The same sort of placebo button goes for pronouncements made by the chair of the Federal Reserve. Markets move even though the statements inject little of tangible value into the economy. In fact, if you literally look at the verbiage, there is pretty vague. They're merely sound waves, and still we allow economic heads to turn and continue to play with the illusionary dials. It would be a real wake-up call if all involved realize the truth that the world economy is fundamentally very complex and an uncontrollable system. What we do have control of is how we pivot and adapt and respond to the variables and changes in those systems. So a worthy question to explore is, do you have everything under control? And what are your illusions of control? It's in the case of actual what we can control in life, it's probably far less than what you think. Therefore, focus on the things of importance that you can really have an influence. One of them is our own responses to things in life. For everything else, let it go, because our actual sphere of influence is much smaller than our brains will assign or give us credit for. The third of the over 100 cognitive errors that caught my attention is never judge a decision by its outcome. This is referred to as outcome bias. Outcome bias is when we tend to or evaluate decisions based on the result rather than on the decision process. This fallacy is also known as the historian error. A classic example is the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Should the U.S. military have based an evacuation, or should the military base on Pearl Harbor been evacuated or not? From today's perspective, looking in the rearview mirror, obviously it should have, for there was plenty of evidence that an attack was imminent. But that's also looking at things in the rearview mirror of history. It's only in retrospect do the signals appear so clear. At the time, in 1941, there was a plethora of contradictory signals. Some pointed to an attack, others didn't. To assess the quality of the decision, we must use the information available at the time and the best process at the time, filtering out everything that we know about the event in the post-attack and historical perspective, particularly that it didn't need to take place, because in the time of the event, in that actual time period, there were lots of contradictory signals, and it's real easy to say, oh, because of this outcome, they should have seen. You get to fill in the blank. So never judge a decision purely by its result, especially when randomness and external factors play a primary role, which is usually in more situations than we think. A bad result does not automatically indicate a bad decision, and vice versa. A good result doesn't always necessarily indicate a good decision. So rather than pulling your hair out about a wrong decision or applauding yourself for the one that may have only coincidentally led to success, remember why you chose what you did. And there are many experts that recommend that you actually keep a diary of your decision processes, and more importantly, look for the principles that were followed in regard to it. I know Ray Dalio, one of the most successful hedge fund managers on the planet, recommends focusing and concentrating on fundamental principles. Were your reasons for the decision rational and understandable? Then you would do well to stick with that method, even if you didn't hit it lucky the first time or the last time you did it. So don't necessarily shift your focus just because of the outcome and fall into that outcome bias. There are many other cognitive errors that we can explore, and we will be exploring in future rooms. However, today we highlighted three. Seeing shapes or patterns when they aren't necessarily there. The fact that we have less control than we think, the illusion of control, and the outcome bias, where we should never judge a decision by its outcome. One final nudge is to expand your awareness and perceptions and minimize your cognitive errors. It will open up more possibility, greater possibility, and increase the variety of responses to any given situation or challenge rather than limiting them. There was a cybernetician, W. Ross Ashby, from the UK, working in the 1950s, who also became interested in the phenomenon of balance or homeostasis, the way in which complex systems operating in changing environments actually succeeded when there were a lot of critical variables. And he came up with what he called the law of requisite variety, and states that for a system to be stable, the number of states that it can control and is capable of attaining, essentially it's a variety, must be greater or equal to the number of states in the system being controlled. And every layer of life has systems, so the more English version of that is the more we're able to have a variety of responses in states, and when we have more options in that regard to all the variables in the system, the more stable things will be. So given that variety reduction seems to be unfeasible with the rise of the internet, global connectivity, and a global economy and exponential change, all these changes have made variety reduction or limiting our options extremely difficult. And the implication is that many individuals and many of our organizations and social systems are ones that have evolved in order to cope, typically offer lower levels of variety, and this fundamentally is no longer viable. The path into viability requires that we have to find ways of increasing the variety of perceptions, options, and choices we have. And we'll have much greater stability in the outcomes that we hope to obtain. So the question is, will you be one of them, or will you stay trenched in blind spots and cognitive errors? So we've covered my standard nudge, let go of your cherished misconceptions, that we all have cognitive errors that impede our success and sabotage us in many ways. There, in fact, are over 100 common cognitive errors. To explore them, a great read is The Art of Thinking Critically. We've explored just 3 of those 100 or plus common errors or cognitive errors. And some creative names, why we see shapes in clouds. Our brains will actually deduce patterns that really aren't there. We can control less than what we think, our illusion of control. And we often get stuck in outcome bias. We judge the decision by its outcome rather than looking at the decision process itself and the principles involved. Are they serving us, and are they sound, rather than maybe the random outcome? I'm often a little bit amused with sports when we have playoffs and brackets and so forth. One team wins, and the outcome justifies that that's the better team, when that's not a solid statistical sample. It takes 125 samples to be statistically significant. So a better assessment of who's the best team is actually to have 128 or 125, whatever the number is, of matches, and then you'll get a statistical meaningful number. But a lot of fans are down that rabbit path of, we've got the best team based on one outcome that could have just been based on chance rather than skill. So I know you'll start paying attention to your cognitive errors today and each and every day. Keep in mind it takes repeated practice to build awareness of these cognitive errors, and you'll won't be able to completely eliminate them. However, if we learn to recognize and evade some or our biggest errors and thinkings in our private lives, work lives, and social containers, we might experience a leap in prosperity and the variability and flexibility required for stability. With this new awareness, I know you'll explore your cognitive errors and apply the effort to minimize them. And you'll join me in future rooms and follow me to know about those future rooms and learning some of the other brain shifting techniques that we can adapt for greater success, fulfillment, and possibility in life. And if you're not a member of the Brain Shift Club, please join us. If you'd like to book a free one-on-one discovery session with me, I'll post that link to the top of the room. Give me a second to grab that. As the technology cooperates here. Okay, there we go, and I'll also place it in the room chat for anybody that finds it easier to grab it there. I also have a very inexpensive our Foundations of Success program. So let me plop that in the chat as well. And pin it to the top of the room. And if you have any interest in my coaching programs, you can find everything that I'm up to in my profile or the link keithenglehart.com that I've posted in the chat. And we'll also pin that one to the top of the room. So thank you for attending today, and I look forward to seeing you in future rooms. Remember to visit the replay, share it with others, as well as invite them to attend future rooms. Sharing is caring. And since these cognitive errors are a natural part of being human, and there's quite a few of them, over 100, we'll be exploring some of them in another session, part 2 or part 3, however far down we venture into that rabbit path. But I found it an interesting enough subject matter to do a few rooms on it. So hope to see you in future sessions.